Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions. Please don't forget that tonight, tomorrow, and all day Sunday, Joe and Becky will be with us. This is a opening year revival meeting where we're just going to worship and pray for the sick and have a wonderful time together. But right now, I want us to come back to the book of Genesis chapter 5, beginning with verse 1. This is the written account of the descendants of Adam. When God created human beings, he made them to be like himself. Okay, we were created in his image. He created them male and female, and he blessed them and called them human. When Adam was 130 years old, he became the father of a son who was just like him in his very image, and he called his son Seth. Now, in my Bible, I make a little comment alongside of it. Generational loss. Now, I'm going to sound like an ancient of days old man here for a minute, but does anybody remember Betamax tapes and VHS tapes? Do you remember when you made a copy of one? There was always a generational loss. And if you made 2 or 3 copies down, before long is really getting faded. We call that generational loss. And one of the beautiful things about digital is that there's no generational loss when you make a copy. But there is generational loss in creation. People often wonder today, what does God look like? Well, I'm created in his image. Well, sorta. Okay. Image would be like a photograph. We can see the resemblance. Just like if you look at me, you can see features that look like my grandfather. But there's been a generational loss after my grandfather and then my father and now me. I may have grandpa's nose and sometimes I have grandpa's smile. I definitely have my grandpa's called Bo. Now if you can understand that principle, understand that when God created man, he created us in his image. When man gave birth to their own children, man gave birth to children in their image, no longer God's image, in their image. And remember, by this time, the fall of man has taken place. A lot has changed. Sin has corrupted this world. So be very careful when you run around and tell people, I look like God. Be very careful when you run around and begin to get all puffed up because we're created in the image of God. Yes, we are. But there's been generational loss. This is one of the reasons why we have to be very careful when it comes to teaching people the Word of God. There are people who take extreme forms of discipleship today, and all they do is make people in their own image, not the image of Christ. See, no one is to become our disciple. No one is to become our disciple. We are to make every person a disciple of Christ. When you and I start making people our own disciples, and we start wanting them to follow our teachings and be like us, that there's so much generational loss that has taken place. Our goal as Christians is to point everybody to Jesus. Every person should be like Jesus. We have been, as Paul says, predestined to be conformed into the image of Christ. We've not been predestined to be conformed into the image of a pastor or a discipler. So let me challenge you today. Remember the principle of generational loss. Do you want people to be like Jesus? Then don't try to make them like yourself. These are not your spiritual children. Make them like Jesus.